How's your married sex life? I'm Dr. Carol, and this is Relationship Prescriptions. If you're married, the quality of your sex life, or lack thereof, is a big determinant of just how things are going between you and how you feel about your relationship. It's one of the top 3 areas of dissension among married couples. Doesn't have to be that way. God intended sex to be beautiful, exhilarating, bonding, healing, connecting, a source of goodness for both husband and wife, a means of coming closer together. If it's not that way, then there's some underlying issues in your relationship. Almost always, if not always, sex is diagnostic of what is going on in other areas of the relationship. Sexual issues are almost always, if not always, relationship issues. Looking at the why underneath always is both important and helpful. What can you do if your married sex life isn't great? I want to just excitedly tell you about the Marriage Healing Kit from Dr. Carol Ministries. If you are a regular listener or watcher to Relationship Prescriptions, I mentioned that last time, and you may want to check out last week's podcast if you didn't already check that out. But the quality of your sex life and making your sex life healthier, stronger, better, more joyful is one of the things that we talk specifically about in the Marriage Healing Kit. Marriage Healing Kit has several different components. There's a 40-day prayer guide that you can download or get in your email inbox. There's the guide to healthy communication in marriage, and some of the specific helps in that communication guide are specifically talking about sex with your spouse. And then the Fully Alive Marriage online video course. 2 of the 10 modules in that course specifically address sex. And of course, it's something that is mentioned in many areas all through that 10 module course. This can definitely get better between you. So whether the sex life between you and your spouse has been a matter of, I want more, or I hate sex, or maybe it's been traumatic, maybe there has been betrayal and deep, deep pain. Whatever the dynamics there, you don't have to stay there. I want to encourage you to get the Marriage Healing Kit because there is specific help for you in dealing with these very areas. Part of the Marriage Healing Kit is 3 45-minute individual sessions with me. And that's something I get asked about like all the time. Anybody who's married and reaches out to me, whether it's an individual or a couple, that's always high on the list. And we can talk directly about that and give you some specific help for your specific individual situation. And at the premier level, the Marriage Healing Kit includes a 3-day marriage intensive with me, a couple people working with me, and just 2 or 3 other couples. This is a small group where you can actually work out, actually practice the kinds of things that you need in your marriage and get individual personalized help in a small group setting. That can just transform everything for you. In the Fully Alive Marriage course, which is a core piece of this Marriage Healing Kit, we have a lot of supplemental resources, interviews, articles, expert input. One of those expert interviews is with Dr. Michael Sytsma. We shared this interview back in 2023 with you here on the podcast, if you've been connected with us for that period of time. But this is such a strong and powerful conversation. We're bringing it out of the archives, and I want to share it with you here. Dr. Michael Sytsma is an ordained minister, a licensed professional counselor, a certified sex therapist, a professor, and national speaker. He has over 30 years of experience, and he, along with Shanti Feldhine, released a book, The Secrets of Sex and Marriage. Just some powerful insight out of the Intimacy Project research that Dr. Sytsma headlined. I want you to listen to this incredibly insightful and practical conversation that in itself, this will help you in your marriage and your married sex life. It will help normalize some of the struggles and give you some practical ways to move past them. This is just one example of the kind of material you get inside the Marriage Healing Kit. But watch this. Dr. Michael Sytsma, I have been looking forward to this conversation. Just welcome. Really glad that you're here today.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's an honor to be here.
I was at a conference a few months ago where you presented some data from the Intimacy Project that just really got my mind going. And I know for our audience, this is going to be so helpful. The number one thing that people come to our website, our resources for is, what do I do if my spouse doesn't want sex? And you've been talking about this for decades, and you presented some data that is fascinating. And I know you talk to couples about this all the time. So maybe just start with, where does that kind of a question fit in couples who are in the middle of what may not feel like a great marriage, or even one that maybe isn't so bad?
You know, you're right. It is a common question. In my dissertation, which was 20 years ago, I asked the couples. I surveyed 150 married couples, asked them about the level of pain that they experience with their desire discrepancy, and over half of the couples said, one or the other of them said, that they had considered talking to a professional because the pain in their marriage around sexual discrepancy was so great. If I fall and hurt my finger, I'm probably not going to call the doctor. If the bone is sticking out, I'm probably going to call the doctor. There's a level of distress where I'm going to seek a professional. And over half the couples said, I've reached that level of distress. So we know there's a high amount of it, in couples.
Yeah. In speaking to the majority of our audience who identify as Christian, I hear frequently from people who say something like, why did God create us so different? Why is God not fulfilling what I thought he would and giving me a wife who wants sex? Or, why for a wife, why did God make men with their sex drive like this?
I love that God works with balance. He created Adam, and he looked at him and he says, yeah, you can't really reflect me fully by yourself. And so he created Eve, something different, something similar, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bones, but very different. And the two of them come together, and they're able to reflect more of who God is in the differences. We just know that couples who marry that are different, if they can accept influence from each other, they make a far richer, stronger relationship. Even in parenting, one is a little bit more lax and one is a little more rigid. If they accept influence from each other, then they create a better balanced parent. What we've learned is that most husbands, way not all, couples can look at the numbers in the book, but most husbands have what we would call an initiating type of desire. They wake up in the morning and they're thinking about it. They think about it several times during the day. They're, in the book, we use the imagery, they're a car that's in drive. Even without the foot on the accelerator, the car is still creeping forward. They're still interested in this. And they just intuitively expect that their wife is going to be the same way, because that's how sexual desire works, right? You're thinking about it and you're interested in it. And if you're not, it must mean that you don't desire me.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about it and I desire to be with you. And they fail to realize that she has a radically different kind of desire. She has a receptive desire. Her car's in neutral, as it were. He hasn't thought about it in 3 days. And he has to do something that draws her, that helps her to drop into drive and wants to move forward. And that may be 5 to 10 minutes into the sexual act before she starts to experience desire. And pointing out that that is a very normal, healthy type of desire, but it's really different from his. And
Yeah.
most couples don't understand that we're wired differently. Why did God do that? I think the influence of both allows us to reflect something pretty healthy about him.
Yeah. You mentioned a dynamic that I hear about a lot, and that is the husband who feels like if my wife isn't expressing a desire for sex, if she doesn't initiate sex, then she doesn't want me. What do
Right.
you tell husbands who are feeling that way?
Well, first, it is most common in husbands, but what our research showed is about 1 in 4 couples, the wife is feeling that. And so I don't ever want to leave out, that's a lot of wives that come into my office and say, he just doesn't like my body anymore. And he looks over and he says, yeah, I actually do. That's not it. That they have a mismatch in desire. What I tell them is, there are several things that we've learned. First off, they're probably not as far apart as they think they are. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things we point out in the book. And I've seen consistently in my research over the last 20 years. And the way that plays out in my office is I look at a couple that are in my office arguing over it. And I ask him, if it were totally up to you, how often would you like to have sex? And most husbands say, I don't know, 2 to 3 times a week. And I look at her and say, how often would you like to? And she says, I don't know, 1 to 2 times a week. And I say, guys, there's not much difference between two and two. You're not as far apart as you think. But I ask her how often would he like to, and she says, every day. And I ask him how often would she like to, and he says, never. Well, there's a
Yeah.
huge difference between never and every day. And that what we call in our field misattribution, that I believe something about you that's not true. That is my whole dissertation came down to that's where the pain comes from, is misunderstanding each other, misunderstanding the type of desire you have, what you really want. And so what I tell couples is, what does it take for us to be curious, which is the whole point of, one of the chapters. How do we be curious to lean in and understand each other rather than be proscriptive and critical and commanding, and telling you need to match up to what I want. So
Yeah.
when they're different, they shift to the same page. It's fun to watch. He looks over and he goes, "Wait, 1 to 2 times a week, really?" And she's like, "Yeah, I would enjoy that." And then he asks the brilliant question. He says, "Why aren't we? If both of us want more, why aren't we having more?" And I look and say, that's the right question. Not what's broken and wrong with you, but why aren't either of us getting what we want? And it may be because of how you've set up life. It may be because you haven't been really nice to each other. There's a host of reasons that make for legitimate, not wanting to,
Yeah.
that can be problem solved.
Yeah. One thing I will sometimes tell a couple who ask me about this is many men see sex as a way to connect. When they want to connect with their wife, they think about sex. For many
Right.
women, they see sex more as the result or the outcome of a connection.
Mhm.
Am I in the ballpark there?
Well, our bodies are actually designed that way. Um, when a guy experiences an orgasm with a partner, his oxytocin level, which we know is the connecting bonding chemical, goes up 500 to 600% and
Mm.
stays that high for between 5 and 30 minutes. It drags up prolactin, vasopressin, and dopamine. A lot of things go up, and he feels 120% connected to her in that moment. And so he comes home from being on a business trip for 5 days, walks in the door, he knows how to be 120% connected with her. In the next 30 minutes, we're fine.
Yeah.
And part of what I love is for most couples, for not all, but for most couples, he looks at her and says, let's get naked so we can reconnect, because that is his experience. And she looks at him and says, "Yeah, after you take me out to dinner, you tell me about what it's been like to be away. You find out what it's been like to raise your kids while you've been gone. Uh, I need you to love on me and connect with me because her body requires a high level of oxytocin to be able to say yes. That's just how she's made." And when they can understand, we're wired differently. And I work with couples again where that's the reverse. Um, but often the difference in wiring, I think, is rich and good. In chapter 10, I talk about the theology of it, God's design. And one of those things is I believe that sex is designed to be God reflective. And in that, it's what I call incarnational, or what theology calls incarnational, where Christ is both body and, he's fully human and he's fully God. And I think sex at its best is incarnational, where it's focused fully on the body and fully on the heart. And in those moments, I see it reflected profoundly as he comes in and he says, "Let's connect body." And she says, "As soon as you've touched my heart." And they accept influence from each other, and the richness of it, they can reflect a richness in sexuality that is more God reflective. If he says no, it's just about body, something gets wounded and broken and doesn't work. If she says it's just about the spirit of the act, just about the heart, I don't want to attend to the body, something is broken and wounded, and it's no longer rich. And the couple's going to start to drift apart and get angry and hurt and wounded, and it doesn't work really well. Where I think that difference, when we can appreciate it, wow, you're wired different. If I accept influence from your wiring, then I am going to engage more often. I am going to be more tender when we engage, and I'm going to create a setting that is richer, because that's what it's required for you to go from neutral into drive.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, since I'm a woman, I picture myself on that side, and I experience this with my husband. When I do take a mental step toward him when he was alive, my body would follow, and the whole
Right.
connection between us became richer. It's like you were just saying, one without the other on either side is not complete intimacy. I think that's part of why the the use of the word intimacy as a euphemism for sex misses it. It's got to be all a package. I wish we had a better word to talk about the whole experience, body, mind, and soul.
Right. Because as you identified, it really takes all of that to have a rich sex life, for it to be satisfying to everybody. And sex is designed for both couples.
Yeah.
I also, or for both individuals in the couple. When it becomes focused just on one, it gets very unhealthy. And I love also how you said it there, that your body follows. For those that are receptive desire, that's how their body is wired. Is at least what we're thinking in the field right now. And we see the receptive spouse choosing to engage sexually,
Yes.
and then their body starts to engage, and they go, "Wow, look, I'm getting aroused. This is feeling
Yeah.
good. I'm liking this. I'm
Really
feeling
good.
connected
Yeah.
to my spouse." Yeah, and then the brain turns on the desire. That the desire doesn't show up until we've taken those 4 steps. And their spouse often, it seems like, and we don't think that's fully accurate, but it seems like desire leads the path, that it's driving them forward. And so they experience desire, and then they engage, and then their body starts to respond. And so when we have, only 10% of couples said that they are both that initiating type of desire. So you've got 90% of couples that are different than that. Most of them, one is initiating and the other is receptive. And when they understand that piece, it allows them to work together.
Yeah. I can imagine that this mutuality that you're describing, um, it can get skewed on either side. And you kind of alluded to this,
Correct.
but for a man who says, give me sex when I want it because I need it, he is truly missing the whole experience. And for a woman who complains and nags her husband if he's not responding, or more statistically common, well, no, I'm not giving you my body. Nobody is getting what they want. How do you help
Correct.
couples get to more of this mutual experience that truly benefits them both?
Well, I think it starts with having a good vision in mind.
Mhm.
What do we want our sex life to look like? And how do we accept each other's influence to create a rich vision?
Yeah.
If he's the higher desire person and he says, well, I want to have sex 3, 4 times a week. And she says, I don't know that I can do that and feel really connected to you, but we could do 1 to 2 times a week. And they wrestle with it until they create a vision that they both can be on board with. The moment either of them starts demanding their own way,
Yeah.
well, that's totally counter to scripture.
Yes.
That is not what any of scripture says is going to work. Um, Paul's real clear in saying, "You be a servant to one another. You care for one another." So, how do I accept your influence and we work to craft a vision that is enriching for both of us? Then we have to set aside. Sex is one of those fascinating things where I think God, it is a divine object lesson, where He's teaching us I have to be selfless and selfish at the same time. Because if I'm not selfish in sex and I don't make it about what feels good to me, then it's not going to be good for the other. But at the same token, if I'm not selfless in sex and make it about you and it's not good for either of us. And we have to find that balance where I go, yeah, right there, just like that, don't move because this feels good to me. And I have to figure out what does feel good to me and be selfish in it so that I can give to you. But then at the same token, I can't demand from you in a way that dishonors you and only feeds me.
Yeah.
And I love how he put this imagery in that I have to figure out how to care for me and you in this moment. And when we both do that, we reflect something of God that we don't in any other time. We create a richness and intimacy that is profound and is worth striving toward.
It occurs to me that the wedding night for the classic Christian model, the first
Mhm.
time a couple has sex together, you're not going to know all of that. You're not going to know how to do this dance. And maybe just a moment, if we can just disabuse the idea that if you quote do it right, the wedding night's going to be bliss and happily ever after. This takes work. It's a journey.
One of my mentors didn't believe that couples could have a truly great sex life until they had been married for 30 years or more. That he says an individual has to be over 50 in order to have a great sex life because it takes that long before they know themselves and they accept themselves before they can walk in and go, yeah, I don't look 20 anymore, but man, I know my body and I know how it works and I know your body and let's have fun. And I used to always think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I have yet to meet a married couple that says their honeymoon night was all of what they envisioned it to be sexually. You
Good.
know, I think we are taught that if we do the right things, that it's just going to be magically correct, and life doesn't work that way. It's discipline, it's discipleship, it's a learning, it's discovery. It takes a lot of work, and it's really there's a lot of bumps and difficulty along the way. But if we keep the vision in mind and keep striving toward it, it can be truly rich and profound.
Yeah. We've only barely alluded to some of the challenges, and we don't have time to go into depth, but I just want to give you a couple minutes to address the baggage that I believe every human being brings to marriage. Nobody comes to sex and marriage without stuff, whether that's previous sexual
Hmm.
relationships, whether that's sexual harm, whether that's other messages from culture, from religion, or whatever. Maybe
Correct.
just talk about the paradigm of what has to happen in this 30-year journey to good sex with the baggage that everybody comes with.
I think part of what we do as humans, so this isn't just because somebody's a bad person, but I step in with expectations that I maybe don't even realize that I have.
Mm.
I step in with the belief that you're going to want to connect with me sexually. And then when you don't, we as humans don't tend to handle that well. When I don't get what I think I deserve, or when I don't get what I think I need, or I don't get what I want, we tend to shift into a critical, demanding, proscriptive kind of a mentality of I'm going to make you do what I want. And we have a host of unhealthy ways we go about that. And in some levels, that's just developmental, it's immaturity. Um, I've looked at many young wives and apologized for her husband. I'm sorry, he's a young man, he loves you dearly, and he's going to unintentionally wound you. And I look at the husbands and say the same thing. She
Mm,
loves you dearly,
yes.
but when you start to push, she's not going to handle that maturely because she doesn't know how. And you're going to get wounded in this process.
Yes.
And if we can, it takes maturity. I think it takes time for us to step back and stop demanding from our spouse, stop being critical of our spouse, and move into an invitational, curious mindset. I point out that Christ was invitational. Um, he was always inviting people, and if they didn't, he let them not. The only people he was really critical of were those that were using his law to wound others,
Yes.
and he was very critical of them. So let's not use God's law to wound others. Beyond that, he was invitational, and I tell couples, if you can invite, if you can be curious, wait, how do you work?
Mhm.
What would you like, and how do you, rather than you need to be who I want you to be. The moment I start to push another human, they lock down.
Yes.
They push back. They go into defense mode, and now we move further apart. And I think it takes us leaning in and truly being a servant of caring for one another, while standing up for here's what I need in this process. That dance takes couples a while to develop, but when they do, it can be really rich and good.
Yeah. It occurs to me as you describe that it takes a lot of vulnerability, because if I am not getting my desires or expectations met, I have to feel that pain enough to open myself up and explore why. And just that process means I could be hurt more. I have to let you
Right,
know where I'm less than whole, and then accept you as your less than whole self too, as we try and come closer together. That just the vulnerability of that whole journey, it strikes me.
right. And one of the leaders in the sex therapy field pointed out that pursuing healthy sexuality is a way to develop maturity, and it takes maturity to pursue healthy sexuality.
Wow.
That's both a give and a take. But if I can keep a vision in mind, and we both keep striving toward it, and when you fall off the path and you're not who you said you were going to be with me, it's not my job to get you there. you know
Yes.
you agreed that this is what we're moving towards, and I believe in you and I love you and I'll invite you to get back on the path. And then when I fall off, I confess it and I own it, and this is not who I want to be. And we step back on the path and we keep moving forward. That's when it can work, rich. That's when it can be good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, just the picture of intimacy, that strikes me again: seeing and being seen, knowing and being known.
Mhm.
The walls up. It's not only the clothes on your body; it's the emotional, mental, memory, spiritual walls. I
Right,
have to take all of those down, and I have to be a safe place for you to take those walls down if it's going to be good.
right. I point out to couples in my office that um, the Garden of Eden gives us kind of the normal pathway that we judge. We find ourselves as not okay. We find you as not okay. And then
Yes.
we hide from each other.
Yes.
And then we blame. That we judge and hide and blame is as old as the creation story. And I find it fascinating that the first thing that Adam and Eve did, after judging themselves as not okay, as each other is not okay, is they hid their sexuality from each other. Scripture says they made aprons, they covered their genital region from each other. And I think that's fascinating, that there is such a profound sense of shame and
Yes.
fear around our sexuality, that it's normal for us to be terrified to be open in that arena. And and the invitation is, let's keep pursuing the vision that we have, which requires us to drop our guard. And sometimes I'm going to drop our guard and you're going to go, seriously, that's what it looks like?
Yeah.
And I'm going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And yet we're on this path together, and you're going to apologize for hurting me, and I'm going to take the risk again, and we'll stumble forward and we'll figure out, wow, that kind of felt good. Let's try that again. Versus, okay, yeah, let's not do that one again.
Yeah. Dr. Sytsma, I feel like there's so much more that we could unpack. We'll make sure that the links to your book are in the notes for this, under this video, and in the show notes for this, for the audio. But last question, for somebody or a couple who is really struggling in this area, maybe just a final word about Christian sex therapy. Is it a thing? And how might somebody pursue next steps if they're really on the edge here and really need something deeper?
Yeah, so Christian sex therapy really is a thing. We've spent over 20 years through the Institute for Sexual Wholeness, training uh, training therapists and pastors how to work with this subjects exactly like this. If they go to the book website, we've got a list of resources of if they need more help, here's where to find that help. So all they have to do is go to the book website, secretsexandmarriage.com, and look for the additional resources, and it'll help them to find hopefully a Christian sex therapist right in their area, somebody who's been trained and works with this. Most couples do need some help. Most couples need somebody to sit in the room and de-escalate the process to help them to be curious and to, as you know, all we do as therapists is often create a safe space for them to do the work. And a skilled therapist can help them to be curious, to understand each other, to craft a vision that they can pursue together.
We will make those links available as well. And I so appreciate you, Dr. Sytsma, your work, your time, the hope,
Thanks.
the beautiful vision that this all shows. Many blessings on you and your work.
Thanks for the opportunity.
The Marriage Healing Kit includes links to this and a wide variety of other expert interviews about marriage. Each of the modules includes extra supplemental material. And then there's the teaching with me in those modules and the interaction with the couples that are part of this course, Marilyn and Michael, Cynthia and Kevin, Elaine and Jonathan. But the Marriage Healing Kit includes much more than just this online digital course. It includes the Guide to Healthy Communication. It includes 40 days of prayer that you can download, and just practical written out prayers that you can use if you choose in bringing God into your situation. This kit includes 3 45-minute individual sessions with me, either just one-on-one or as a couple, ideally. And then at the premier level, a marriage intensive, 3 days with me and a couple of my partners, where you, and along with a couple other couples, a very small group, can get some intimate and personalized help for your unique situation. I would invite you to click on the link in the show notes if you're listening, or under this video if you're watching, or go to drcarolministries.com/marriage healing. Check out which of the levels is right for you, which package fits you best. And I would love you to take advantage of this. Make this the day your marriage steps toward healing. If you have questions, I would love to hear from you. You can leave a comment or a question under this video, or if you're listening or just want to come over to drcarolministries.com, the contact page there, that's confidential. That comes directly to me, and I will answer your question personally. I would love to hear from you. Make sure you're subscribed. I would encourage you to tell somebody else about relationship prescriptions. That is the best way other people find out about this program. During the next few weeks, we will continue our focus on marriage. I have a powerful, powerful interview to share with you next. So stay tuned. This 6-week session in relationship prescriptions about marriage. So make sure you're subscribed. And until next time, may God bless you.